Somewhere in the vast multiverse, beyond the reach of maps or reason, there existed a small, idyllic town known simply as Any Town. No one remembered when it was built or who had first lived there, but everyone knew this. Any Town floated on inspiration. Ideas drifted through its streets like motes of golden dust, settling gently into the minds of those who needed them most. The people treasured this spark, and the spark treasured them. At night, a warm yellow glow shimmered from every cottage window, as if the town itself were breathing softly in its sleep. Inside, people gathered to draw, paint, write, sing, dance, celebrating imagination as though it were the pulse of life itself. And when the day finally surrendered to dreams, they drifted into sleep, ready to greet new ideas with the rising sun. Yet even in a town so steeped in creativity, very few knew the true origin of their ideas. For the bringers of inspiration, tiny beings known as muses or Machine-Elves lived unseen in the spaces between breaths, between moments, between worlds. These particular elves all shared one unmistakable trait: a head shaped like a miniature microphone, tuned to the softest, most unspoken wishes of sleeping humans. Night after night, they listened, and day after day they returned to the ancient forest nearby, drawing from the plants a shimmering substance, an essence of pure possibility. This delicate light pulsed within their small, glowing hearts, fueling their journey back into the human realm. Invisible to nearly every eye, they fluttered through reality like whispers. Only a handful of people ever sensed who or what had sparked their sudden insights, and only a rare few had actually seen them. Mechanical, whimsical creatures with wings that shimmered between dimensions. Some of their wings were metallic, clicking and unfolding like tiny clockwork. Others were soft and feathered, or leathery like miniature dragons. Their personalities ranged from gentle and nurturing to wildly mischievous, balancing the world with the same variety that inspiration itself carries. Some elves were visionaries. They opened their microphone domes like an awakening eye, their bodies tapering into a delicate paintbrush, deliverers of images, colors, and shapes. Others were creatures of words and sound, their mic heads humming with melodies, spoken rhythms, or poetic fragments. Their tails ended in quills, ready to ignite stories, lyrics, and songs. And though they were unseen, their influence filled the world. Behind every invention, every breakthrough, every masterpiece, somewhere nearby, a machine elf hovered, smiling quietly in the shadows. Many wondered where inspiration truly came from. This is how it happened. Whenever a person faltered, a painter afraid to choose a color, a child unable to form a story, an old woman who had forgotten what joy sounded like, an elf chose them. Silently, it slipped through the window by night, settling upon the pillow. It let its tiny heart light bloom, glowing gently into the sleeper's subconscious. By dawn, something had shifted. The painter reached for a forgotten jar of paint. The child grabbed long-lost pencils. The old woman hummed a tune the world hadn't heard from her in 50 years. The elves never asked for gratitude. In fact, each time they gave away their spark, they grew paler, translucent even. And when one faded completely, it returned to the forest, curled inside the hollow of an ancient tree, and slipped into a deep, restorative sleep. There it waited for a wandering dream to pass by, one that could fill its heart with light once more. And just like that, the world kept moving forward, gently guided by hands no human could see. Sometimes, in the earliest hours of morning, when the forest is still and wrapped in fog, tiny lights drift between the leaves, little stars moving with purpose. Machine-Elves on their way to someone they have never met, but who needs them desperately. This had been happening for as long as humanity had existed. But in any town, there lived one man who truly understood. A painter consumed by the desire to reveal the unseen helpers who shaped human history. He devoted his life to capturing their influence, brushstroke by brushstroke, honoring the Machine-Elves who had shaped so many eras, so many minds. On canvas, he showed how they whispered ideas to the ancient Egyptians as the pyramids rose. How they guided the Maya in building their extraordinary civilization. How Tibetan monks perfected meditation under their gentle watch. How Nikola Tesla saw lightning in his dreams. How Einstein followed the threads of thought into revelation. How Van Gogh discovered his blazing, emotional style. How Picasso shattered the boundaries of form. How Dali stepped into surreal dimensions and invited the world to follow. How Albert Hofmann opened portals with the discovery of LSD. How MC Escher captured impossibilities on paper. How Charlie Parker bent jazz into something entirely new. How the Beatles wrote songs that echoed through generations and painted worlds of their own. How Jim Morrison shaped mythic poetry into music. How Pink Floyd built a sonic universe of dreams and shadows. How Frank Sinatra conquered New York with sheer presence. How Bob Marley carried spiritual light across the globe. How James Brown made the world dance to the heartbeat of the funky drummer. How David Bowie enchanted reality with stardust. How Freddie Mercury's voice crowned Queen's monumental sound. How Prince drenched the earth in purple rain. How DJ Kool Herc blasted music into Bronx streets and ignited a revolution. How hip-hop grew, sample by sample, rhyme by rhyme, uniting cultures and generations. How Nirvana sparked the flame of grunge. How Alice in Chains crystallized its sound into something hauntingly pure. How Type O negative led listeners into deep atmospheric chambers. How Amy Winehouse offered her fragile, powerful soul to the world. And how Richard Ashcroft and The Verve lifted us skyward with the transcendent force of music. And countless more. Without the Machine-Elves, the painter knew, humanity's story would have been unimaginably different. But there were those who preferred it that way. For lurking within any town were forces that stood against everything the Machine-Elves nurtured. The wealthy, calculating, pitiless overlords known as the Mind Casters. Their empire was built on deception, manipulation, and the stripping away of wonder. They destroyed whatever they could not profit from. Cozy homes were torn down for sterile towers. Fulfillment gave way to monotonous, grinding labor. The warm, golden glow of evening was replaced by cold, blue screens, televisions and smartphones engineered to addict every citizen. The Mindcasters controlled every story, every headline, every fear. To them, the world was a chessboard, and every human a piece to be moved. Their influence seeped into every industry, like evil tentacles, draining resources and spirit like colossal vampires, drinking the lifeblood of the earth. And they flooded the town with endless waves of fear, the necessity of war, the constant threat of terrorism, inflation that crushed hope, blackouts that sowed chaos, viruses, cures, and the profits they concealed, environmental devastation, even the supposed end of the world. The people of any town grew terrified and divided. They argued instead of imagining. They hid indoors, waiting for the next catastrophe to appear on their glowing screens. Joy faded, creativity dimmed, and more people began to believe that perhaps the end truly was near. The Machine-Elves watched, hearts aching as any town withered, and they decided this could not continue. They returned to the ancient forest and gathered around the most powerful plants they could find. Absorbing their luminous energy, they rose as a single, radiant swarm, tens of thousands of tiny stars. Together, they flew to the Mindcaster's colossal concrete fortress. Inside, at its core, pulsed the almighty transmitter, the brain that broadcast negativity into every home. The elves encircled the building completely, and at a single, perfect moment, they released their brightest sparks all at once. A tidal wave of pure inspiration crashed into the transmitter. The monstrous machine shuddered, overloaded by positivity, and then suddenly transformed. From that moment on, it could broadcast only beauty, vivid colors, uplifting music, inspiring words. And everything changed. The people of any town slowly awakened from their trance. The addictions faded. Laughter returned. Music bloomed. Dinners became gatherings again. The town blossomed, literally, as residents painted flowers, patterns, and vibrant murals across every wall. And the Mindcaster's central brain, even it surrendered. With a final, reluctant sigh, it accepted that this new world, brighter, warmer, more human, was better. The wealth stolen from the people flowed back into creativity, community, and joy. And so the people of any town lived on, in an endless eruption of imagination and passion, guided always by the gentle, unseen hands of the Machine-Elves.